Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Personal Injury Perspective, and we are very pleased to have with us a notable trial attorney, Joel Rosenberg, with the law firm of Stark & Stark. And boy, we have been reading in the news about a recent result that Joel got for one of his more seriously injured clients, a young man by the name of RJ Steele. Joel, welcome to Personal Injury Perspective. How are you today?
Thanks, Rob. How you doing?
Good, good. Joel, before we get into this amazing result that you achieved for this young man and his family, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How long have you been a trial attorney?
I'm in my 39th year of working on these kinds of cases, and as you know, associated and a partner here at Stark & Stark for 21 years.
And do you have a particular specialty? We all know that you are a personal injury trial attorney, but within that realm, do you have a particular specialty?
Well, over the years, back in the day when I started, we did a little bit of everything, and so I have a lot of experience in all various kinds of personal injury matters. But more recently, in the last 10 or 15 years, I've been focusing on doing a lot of motorcycle cases, and of course, this was a motorcycle collision, some medical malpractice cases, and other serious motor vehicle cases.
It's been all over the news lately about the amazing result that you got for this young man. I believe that it's a total of $25,750,000, and I know, as well as anybody that does personal injury work, to get a result like that, you have to be at the top of your game. And unfortunately, the client has to suffer catastrophic injuries. This was for a young man named RJ Steele. Can you tell us a little bit about RJ? How old was he? What was his life like before this tragic incident?
Sure, Rob. As we all know in the personal injury department here at Stark & Stark, our cases are really about the client. And RJ is really just a remarkable young man. Prior to this crash, July 11th of 2017, he was a state wrestling champion, recent graduate of Burlington County Institute of Technology with a welding certificate. He was a member of the Carpenters Union Local 255. He was an apprentice, and he was working in his father's family business, Steelcraft Builders, with a goal of eventually taking over the business. He was involved in motocross. He was involved in working on cars that he had bought, and he was welding these cars and doing all kinds of things. Had an enormous group of friends, a girlfriend, really, the apple of his father's eye, really proud of, family very proud of him. In his home, there is a room with trophies and ribbons for his sort of accomplishments in these various areas. Just a really remarkable young man with a great promising future ahead of him until, unfortunately, this collision on July 11th of 2017 changed everything for not only him but his family.
How old was he at the time of this collision?
He was 18, almost 19 years old.
And can you tell our viewers what happened?
So RJ was driving down Junction Road in Pemberton Township. He was actually on his way to take his test to get his motorcycle license. He had a permit at the time. And in spite of that, he was really a really experienced motorcycle driver, operator, because he had participated in motocross from a very young age. He was driving down Junction Road, and a Burlink bus, which is a county transportation system bus, pulled out from the stop sign on Junction Road right in front of his path.
And what happened at the time of the collision? Was he thrown from his motorcycle?
He actually made impact with the side of the bus as it pulled out, his motorcycle and his body, and the injuries were catastrophic.
Did he lose consciousness at the scene?
He did, and in fact, as a result of that, he was comatose for about 2 months.
Oh boy, okay. you mentioned briefly who owned this bus that pulled out directly in front of him.
Yeah. The bus was owned by the County of Burlington. The County of Burlington operates a regional transportation a bus system for the benefits of the residents of Burlington County, especially in the rural areas. The operation of that bus system had been, at that time, contracted out to a private entity, Stouts Charter Service, Inc.
And just to be clear, the driver of this bus at the time had the stop sign, correct?
The driver had the stop sign. He had just come from a bus stop that was in a development further down Junction Road.
And when the driver came to that stop sign, were there any obstructions to the driver's view when the driver looked to the left or the driver looked to the right?
Yeah, the road is pretty straight and flat in that area. There would not have been any obstructions to the driver's view of RJ driving down the road.
Was RJ doing anything improper? Was he speeding? Was he not paying attention at the time of this crash?
No, and we had independent witnesses. There was a vehicle right behind him that saw everything, and he was just doing what he was supposed to do, following the speed limit, driving safely, and the bus pulled out in front of him, and there was no time for him to react or do anything.
So you've told us that as a result of this crash, RJ was in a coma. He lost consciousness. Can you tell us a little bit about his path from the time of the crash until today?
Yeah, I know I say this a lot, and I've said this to you and many of our other partners over the years. Really a remarkable young man. He was really given no hope at that time. In the beginning, it was questionable whether he would live. Once he was stabilized and a lot of the vital signs were better, then the question wasn't about whether he would live, but where he would be. And the neurosurgeons and the trauma doctors really thought that RJ would be sort of in that vegetative comatose state for the rest of his life. But he never gave up, and his parents never gave up. In fact, as I explained to you earlier, his parents took leave from their jobs. Russell Steele Sr. Backed off from operating his company. Denise Steele took leave from her job working in the school district, and really devoted their entire lives to helping him get better, even in the face of opinions from these physicians that really did not give RJ much hope.
So RJ's parents both left their jobs to care for this young man during this very acute stage?
After he was originally in a trauma hospital in Trenton, he was moved to a subacute care facility in Mount Laurel, and then the recommendation from the doctors would be that he would be transferred to a rehabilitation facility ostensibly for the rest of his life, and the Steeles would have nothing of that, and they brought him home. And from the minute they brought him home, they worked tirelessly along with rehabilitation doctors and physical therapists and themselves to do everything in their power to rehabilitate RJ.
So not only at the time was RJ suffering from these horrific injuries, but this must have had a substantial impact on the family's finances. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it really changed everything for them because there needed to be some accommodations made to the house. There needed to be some physical therapy equipment that they wanted to have at the house. So it not only affected them in terms of money that they had to lay out, but also in terms of their income.
We then get into the issue of the legal proceedings, and I imagine at some point you filed a lawsuit in the Superior Court naming who?
So the operation of the bus, as I indicated, was from Stouts Charter Service, and it was clear to them very early on, very early on, of the magnitude of his injuries and the liability and their responsibility. So something that's not usual in the work that we do, Stouts very soon came to the table with an offer to settle the case, which was the insurance policy of $10 million. And I do want to give great credit to them and their counsel, Joe Goldberg, who worked really closely with me at that stage, and they were kind enough to help advance some funds for the Steele family to help them very early on with accommodations at the house and the other expenses, which include, at that time, round-the-clock nursing care.
And to be clear, when you say that Stouts came to the table and offered this money early on, this is money from an insurance policy that Stouts paid for. This isn't money coming directly out of the pockets of Stouts Bus Company. Is that fair?
And that's correct. And as you know, the overwhelming majority, if not almost 100% of the work that we do when we're recovering money is working with insurance companies. And that $10 million was the insurance policy that Stouts had on the bus operations that they were doing on behalf of the county.
And so, Joel, having done this work, me personally for 37 years, I think you for a bit longer,
Yep.
We know that many lawyers would have looked at that $10 million and said, we're done. It seems that, in fact, the majority of personal injury lawyers would have said, okay, we're done, because of certain complications with going after Burlington County and its insurance companies. But you didn't quit at that point. Is that fair?
That's fair. I like to think that, especially here at our firm, that everybody here would have done the same thing. And certainly we know lawyers throughout the state who are really superb lawyers who look under every stone. But the thing that made it even a little more complicated than that is, at some point in time, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, we did have a mediation about trying to resolve the case, and there was some additional money offered by the insurance carriers for the county at that time, around a couple $1 million, and that was the difficult part for the family to accept or reject that offer at that time and continue on with the litigation to try to establish the county's control of the bus system and therefore their potential liability. That was always the risk and the question mark. But the family knew that that would not be sufficient for him, and we made a decision collaboratively to continue on with the litigation.
So just to understand this, and so our viewers can understand this, just because Burlington County owned the bus that was being operated by Stouts, that didn't automatically put the county at fault. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's correct, and that was really the gist of the litigation and the fight in this case, which was whether or not Burlington County exercised significant enough control over the bus operations to have what's called vicarious liability for the actions of the bus driver for Stouts.
So what did you do to prove that Burlington County exercised this control over Stouts?
So in all of our cases, there's a process in litigation called discovery. Discovery is where we request documents, where we request emails, all kinds of electronic data, and we also take depositions of various representatives of the defendants, in this case, the County of Burlington, to try to uncover what relationship they had with Stouts on a day-to-day basis, to try to determine if they had some involvement with the day-to-day operations of the bus system, to eventually convince the court that that was really an issue to be decided by the jury, and that's what ultimately happened.
Okay, and obviously the county's attorneys, and I'm sure they had a team of attorneys, pushed back to try to establish that the county did not exercise control over this bus. Is that fair?
That's fair, and they had some really good lawyers who were doing their job and advocating on behalf of the county, that the county really had subcontracted out this work to Stouts, and as a result of that should be absolved of any responsibility for the actions of the Stouts driver in this case.
So what event prompted the county's insurance company to finally come to the table, recognize its liability, its responsibility here, and then ultimately increase its offer from the 2 million on top of the 10 to I think $15,750,000.
Yeah, you know, we talk about this a lot. We don't always know what's going on, and we rarely know what's going on in the minds of our defense counsel, their insurance carrier. So I don't know exactly what it is that they were thinking. Here's what I know I was thinking. RJ suffered catastrophic injuries, and although this seems like a significant amount of money, if you really dove into what this young man has gone through over the past 7 years, I think most of us would reason to believe that he deserved much more. And I think that they knew that the potential, if this matter went to a trial, and if they were found responsible by a jury in the sense that they were exercising significant control over the bus system, that the verdict could have been a lot larger. And so ultimately, the case culminated in a motion brought by Burlington County to dismiss them from the case under the theory that Stouts was totally independent from the county, and therefore the county should be absolved of responsibility. There's case law to support that if you delegate control to somebody else, you're not responsible. Had extensive discovery on those issues for many, many years, and it ultimately resulted in them bringing this motion before the court to get out of the case. And the judge decided that there were significant issues of material fact that it would be presented to a jury to decide not only how much RJ deserved, but also whether or not the county exercised enough significant control to be responsible for that.
And for you to establish the amount of control the county exerted on Stouts, I understand that you took countless depositions, you went through pages and pages of documents to ultimately build a case to show that really the county was controlling the path of this bus and what the bus did and who the drivers were and so forth, correct?
I did, and these are the things that we all do in these cases where we dig in, we send requests to the defense to provide us with countless documents relating to the contract with Stouts, relating to any kinds of agreements with the state of New Jersey, communications between Burlington County and Stouts, emails between them, and the depositions of county employees to find out the extent of their involvement in dealing with the transportation system. So all of these things came into play, and cumulatively, fortunately, it was enough to convince the judge that there was a possibility that a jury could decide that Burlington County exercised enough control to be responsible.
And we all know, as personal injury lawyers, as trial attorneys, that there is a segment of society that believes that that people get too much money when they suffer an injury like this. But you know, looking at RJ's case, this young man is never going to work again. And he has a future of medical care that's going to cost millions of dollars, correct?
Yeah, he's going to need continued medical care. He needs some care for day-to-day activities of daily living, certain accommodations in terms of his living conditions so he can ambulate through the house. So, you know, if I could explain every aspect of what he's gone through and what's changed in his life, I think most reasonable people would agree that this is not really a lot of money. And the reality is, we all know, even people who've been involved in collisions and crashes, we are more frequently facing situations where the amount of insurance coverage available to compensate someone is a fraction of what those people deserve and what those people need. And that really is the day in and day out practice of personal injury law. We're confronted with insurance policies that are insignificant to compensate people. That's really the story of what happens every day to people who are injured.
And I understand, you know, RJ was 18 years old when this terrible event happened. His life expectancy, my understanding, according to to charts that are prepared by people who know this stuff was well into his 80s, correct?
Yeah, there is some. Typically, that would be his life expectancy. There is some science in medicine that suggests that this type of injury reduces life expectancy. But I know that that's not going to apply to this young man because he is just determined and he has worked tirelessly since he regained consciousness to put himself in the best possible position that he could be in.
I also understand from conversations with you that no amount of money in the world is really fair compensation for something like this, that RJ's life was essentially stolen from him, taken from him because a driver was not paying attention and pulled out in front of him. And I believe you told me once that RJ would give up all of this money to return to where he was in those seconds before this horrible event occurred.
Yeah, he would not only give up the money, he would pay money to get back to his pre-accident state of health. And the unfortunate part of this and all these cases we're involved in is they're preventable. They're preventable. They're preventable with people exercising the care that is required. And so when you have a driver of a bus, a commercial vehicle, they have even a greater duty of care than we do as everyday drivers, and we have a great duty of care to make sure that we don't do the same thing. And unfortunately, I believe that this driver was distracted by using his cell phone. We were never able to pinpoint that he was on the phone at the exact moment of this crash. I'm not sure if he was or he wasn't, but what I do know is this. He was on his cell phone throughout that entire day texting his girlfriend, and it was going back and forth all morning. And the specific requirements, and one of the issues in this case is most of the money, or at least a great portion of the money that comes for these transportation systems, come through the federal government. And the federal government requires that there be training about not using your cell phone when you're operating these regional transportation bus systems. The potential for harm is enormous. You know, you can have a bus full of people that get injured. These buses are big. They cause significant crashes. So it's really important, and I believe that even if he wasn't using his cell phone at that precise moment in time, that his distraction of using it throughout the day before this crash occurred was a major factor in what happened that day. It only takes a few seconds.
Joel, thank you so much for sharing the journey that you went on with RJ and his family. We're really grateful, and thank you for trying to give RJ some semblance of a life by achieving this amazing result for RJ and his family moving forward. We really appreciate your time today, and I'm sure you're on to the next case now, correct?
Thanks, Rob. I really appreciate it, and I think all of us here at Stark and Stark take great comfort in knowing that there is going to be enough money to take care of RJ, and he's going to live the best possible life he can live.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another segment of Personal Injury Perspective, and we'll see you the next time.